I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Okay, well, it's very nice to see a crowd out here today. Obviously, it's not probably for us up here, but it's always nice to see people here. So, first thing on the agenda is to approve the agenda. Anyone have any questions, changes, additions to the agenda?
So moved.
Okay, I got a motion. Second by Dave Brusick. Motion by Amy Jurek. Oh, you're taking notes, Mike? So I got a motion and a second. If there's no other questions, comments, all in favor say aye. Aye. Any opposition? Okay, passes 4-0. First thing on the agenda, at our last council meeting, we appointed a interim council member, and that person is Maggie Bass, or officially Margaret Bass. So she is going to be sworn in tonight, and Mike, I think you're going to handle that.
Let Maggie come down front, please. Face the audience and raise your right hand. Repeat after me. I, Margaret Maggie M. Bass,
I, Margaret Maggie M. Bass,
do solemnly swear
do solemnly swear
that I will support the Constitution of the United States
that I will support the Constitution of the United States
and of the state of Minnesota,
and of the state of Minnesota,
and faithfully discharge the duties of the office of council member
and faithfully discharge the duties of the office of council member
of the city of New Prague
of the city of New Prague
in the counties of Scott and Le Sueur
in the counties of Scott and Le Sueur
and state of Minnesota
and the state of Minnesota
to the best of my judgment and ability.
to the best of my judgment and ability.
So help me God.
So help me God.
All right, the job is yours. Do you have any guests that you would like to point out that are here in attendance for this distinct honor?
My husband is here.
Oh, welcome.
His name is?
Hal.
Hal, welcome. Glad you could make it for the festivities. I hope you got a quick picture of that process. If not, we can do one after, so we record that for posterity. Patrick, did you not bring you got one? All right, good.
Patrick, maybe after the meeting we can get a picture of the new council?
Yeah.
Okay, thank you. Okay, next on the agenda, now that we have Maggie sworn in, I need to make a recommendation to approve her to the HRA Commission. So I look for a motion to...
So moved.
Second.
We got a motion by Sean Ryan, second by Amy Jurek to approve Maggie Bass to the HRA position. There's no other comments. All in favor say aye. Aye. Any opposition? Okay. Welcome. You want to swear in on that, Mike, too?
We can do that one as well.
Yes, you need to be sworn in on your HRA. I guess you can tell it's all about Maggie today.
And with the exception, we'll do the same position. And when we get done with this swearing, we'll go to the police officers and get all the swearing in we need to tonight here. So if you'll repeat after me again. I, Margaret Maggie M. Bass,
I, Margaret Maggie M. Bass,
do solemnly swear
do solemnly swear
that I will support the Constitution of the United States of
that I
America
will support the Constitution of the United States of America
and of the state of
and
Minnesota,
of the state of Minnesota,
and faithfully discharge the duties of the office
and faithfully discharge the duties of the office
of the Commissioner of the Housing and Redevelopment Authority
of the Commissioner of the Housing and Redevelopment Authority
of New Prague, Minnesota,
of New Prague, Minnesota,
according to law
according to law
and to the best of my judgment
and to the best of my judgment
and ability,
and ability.
so help me God.
So help me God.
Okay, next on the agenda, we have to kind of discuss the boards and commissions, and I guess I'm looking for any feedback, any ideas on what anyone has. I mean, it's if anyone wants to change anything, or it's really up to anyone's decision.
I can suggest perhaps I stay with the park board, just for some continuity and the fact that I'm new to the council. I think little easier transition.
Okay. Amy, you're fine with that?
I'm fine with that.
And are you fine going to the planning?
Yes.
Okay. And I'm okay staying with the golf board, if that's okay.
Yeah, I'm okay where I am.
And now the only thing would be,
City Charter Commission, one of
no, not necessarily. I talked to Mike about that. There can still be 3 people on the council, just how we have to
Notice the meetings.
notice the meetings.
There are no restrictions, and those appointments take place by the district court judge or not council.
Oh, okay.
Council recommends, if you recall, to district court, and then the district court judge makes the appointments.
Yeah,
And there's
so,
only one a year.
yeah, there's usually one, maybe, yeah, at this year, so.
Well, if you go
I-
backside the 4-year terms, and every 2 years is when we technically should be appointed. So as you take a look at that in the city charter commission up above, we have appointments coming to an end at the end of this year, one of which would be Maggie's.
Right.
But the council still would have the choice as to who you want to recommend to the district court judge. We just have to make sure we notice the meetings accordingly.
Right. So that really is not an issue. The only issue I was thinking of is the joint powers. I think Maggie, you're serving as the chair and Sean is the council representative. Again, that doesn't have to change either, as long as we recognize that Sean is representing the council, correct, Mike?
That's correct. And if Maggie's staying on the park board, that she can fulfill kind of that.
As a council
representation.
representative, right?
Correct. The only time we would technically get in trouble is if we had 3 and we need to notice that meeting. So if we only have 2, we're still okay from that respect.
I don't have a problem stepping down from that if we need to. I mean, the majority of the work's done now with the school, or with the swimming pool and whatnot, so. If Maggie wants to just take it,
You would still need to come up with an appointment for another representative to serve on that committee.
Yeah.
Oh, okay.
So why don't we just,
Leave it?
yeah, just leave it, as long as we don't have 3 on the board, then we don't really run into any quorum issues that we need to, so.
There are also no terms on those appointments under the joint powers arrangement is that they serve at the pleasure of the council, so there are no ending terms.
And you're having so much pleasure, Sean.
Yeah. Well, I was just worried about because Jerry is the only representative in the school board, so now we'd have 2 council people voting.
But irrespective of the positions, the voting abilities is still only 3 to 3.
Right, okay.
There's, under the format of what we have on the city side and kind of their structure, is that you have an elected official, which has been you, a city representative, which would be on the park board, and then our 3rd person is our staff person, Ken Onich, and then serves as official. So, you can choose to fill that technically however you choose to, and you can serve as long as the council allows you to serve, or unless you change the appointment process.
Okay.
Which is why we try to put more of an updated sheet collectively with everything, so you can see it.
Okay. Any other questions, concerns? If not, then I'm going to make the recommendation to have Maggie Bass as the representative on the park board. Amy Jurek will be full-time representative on the planning commission, and Chuck McLeod will be full-time representative on the golf board. All other appointments to the council remain the same. I just need a motion and a second on that.
So moved.
Second.
I got a motion by Sean Ryan, seconded by Dave Bruzek. Any other comments? If not, all in favor say aye.
Aye.
Any opposition? Okay, passes 5-0. Good. Now, next on the agenda, and I assume this is where most of the people are here for, is we are going to swear in 2 new officers. And Jim, do you want to kind of give us a little introduction?
Sure. Council and Honorable Mayor, we are here tonight to swear in 2 officers that were appointed earlier in June. Officer Zachary Ambroz was appointed June 1st by the council, and Officer Flum was appointed June 19th by the council. Both these officers have been working with field training officers and are working through the field training process right now. And because of the appointment from the council, by statute, you provide and give these officers a lot of authority and power when you do appoint them. Part of that power that you give through the Constitution is to uphold that Constitution, the ordinance of the city, and also the laws of the state of Minnesota. Because of that, we ask that our officers are take an oath to uphold those and to hold themselves accountable, along with holding others accountable to follow those laws and rules. So tonight I would ask that you swear in our first officer, Zachary Ambroz. Zach was raised in New Prague, Minnesota. He moved to the East Coast, lived there a short time, then they moved back to New Prague, where he graduated from New Prague High School. He attended Alexandria Technical College, receiving an associate's degree of applied science in law enforcement. He went to finish his bachelor's degree in Mankato State. After completing his degree, he began working in Renville County as a jailer and then moved to and worked on the road as a deputy sheriff. He also worked part-time in Sacred Heart Police Department. He began working in the city of Renville in March of 14. He continued to work part-time with other departments, along with Olivia and Fairfax Police Departments. Officer Ambroz was then hired by Lonsdale Police Department as a full-time officer in February of 16, where he was employed until he was appointed here in New Prague. And tonight I would like to have Officer Ambroz step up here. If he'd like to introduce any of his family members.
Parents, Chris and Kelly, wife Angie, daughter Henley, and 1-month-old Hudson.
Okay. And with that, we can swear you in, Zach. Okay.
Okay, Zach, raise your right hand. I, Zachary Ambroz,
I, Zachary Ambroz,
on my honor,
will
never betray my badge,
never betray my badge,
my integrity,
my integrity,
my character, or the public trust.
my character, or the public trust.
I will always have the courage to hold myself and others accountable for our actions.
I will always have the courage to hold myself and others accountable for our actions.
I will uphold the United States Constitution,
I will uphold the United States Constitution,
the Constitution of the State of Minnesota,
the Constitution of the State of Minnesota,
and its laws.
and its laws.
I will uphold the ordinances of the City of New Prague
I will uphold the ordinances of the City of New Prague
and faithfully serve my agency
and faithfully serve my agency
and community to the best of my abilities.
and community to the best of my abilities.
Congratulations.
Three to get together so they can take a photo, family or the media.
Thank you.
Yeah, then we'll just go on to them. Yep. Next officer is Neil Flum. He was raised in Cottage Grove, Minnesota. He graduated from Park High School. He attended the University of Minnesota Duluth, graduating with a bachelor's degree in criminology. After completing his degree, he attended Metropolitan State in Law Enforcement Skills Program. In January of 2012, he began working in Brainerd Police Department until April of 2012. In January of 2013, he was hired as a correctional officer for the Scott County Jail and has served there up until his appointment here at New Prague on June 19th. At this time, I would ask Officer Neil Flum to come forward.
With me here, my fiance Mandy, my son Jack in the back with his grandma Tabitha, my parents Stan and Lori, sister Cindy, her husband Nick, and their son Harrison, and Mandy's dad Chris.
Very good.
Neil, raise your right hand. I, Neil Flum,
I, Neil Flum,
on my honor,
on my honor,
will never betray my badge,
will never betray my badge,
my integrity,
my integrity,
my character,
my character,
or the public trust.
or the public trust.
I will always have the courage
I will always have the courage
to hold myself and others
to hold myself and others
accountable for our actions.
accountable for our actions.
I will uphold the United States Constitution,
I will uphold the United States Constitution,
the Constitution of the State of Minnesota,
the Constitution of the State of Minnesota,
and its laws.
and its laws.
I will uphold the ordinances of the City of New Prague
I will uphold the ordinances of the City of New Prague
and faithfully serve my agency
and faithfully serve my agency
and community to the best of my abilities.
and community to the best of my abilities.
Congratulations.
Thank you.
Welcome both of you, gentlemen.
Those two. If you guys want to step back for a picture. And family is excused if you choose to.
Yeah.
It's all right. You don't have to maintain the rest.
That's right. We appreciate you coming for this, we understand, but we're not gonna hold you to staying here. But thanks again for coming. You should be very proud of both those young gentlemen. Next on the agenda, Ken, are you taking this one?
I will.
Discussion on the Veterans Memorial Wall?
So I don't want to steal the group's thunder here, but we have a number of representatives to talk about the new proposed Veterans Memorial that came to the July 11th Park Board meeting. Maggie and Amy were there to hear their presentation at that particular meeting, but I did want to actually give a little background before we have everyone come up and provide some information on the proposal, but this is not the first time that this has been talked about with the council. Actually, at a council meeting, I believe it was the first one we had up at the school district on April 7th of 2014. We did have a presentation from the Means family that talked to the council at that time about the idea for a Veterans Memorial. And at that time, the action was to direct the family to work with staff on a possible location and working towards it. So after that time, staff did have various conversations with Ms. Means and other members of the family, and then also Paul Bush from the Legion, and ultimately maybe lost a little traction over the past few years, but that was put further into motion again when they came back to the park board meeting in July. So I guess with that, I do have some information from the packet that I'll put up on the overhead, but if you would like, Mr. Mayor, to have the individuals provide some information to you, and then we can backfill as needed from the staff's perspective and other discussion we've had.
Sure. The floor is yours.
Can I use the mic?
You may, George.
You did a good job on the radio today, Mr. Mayor. Council, it's a pleasure to be here. In fact, I have a lot of pride in this town of ours. I've been here for a long time. I guess the reason that I'm standing here is I'm probably one of our oldest active vets. I've been in the color guard for 6 years. I've attended 600 funerals. I lost my best friend today, Ralph Bizek. He and I went to school together. He was the oldest and I was the youngest in the class. and I have felt kind of down all day. It was kind of unexpected that he'd leave us this quickly. But to give you the story behind this, Mrs. Beans and her daughter and daughter-in-law have done an awful lot of work on this. And it's something I think that I prayed for over the years, that we do get something like this in a town like ours. There's so many towns that are smaller than ours that have such nice memorials, and so far we have a canon that is a Japanese one. I was gone in February and March. We have a son that lives in Arizona. We have kind of a military family. I lost one of my best cousins in the Second World War, another one as a result soon after. I was in at the end of the Korean conflict to make sure the Russians didn't take over Germany. I had a son in Desert Shield and Desert Storm. Now I have a grandson that's in the Air Force. So I guess that military is something that's very close to my heart. When I came back from there, we had our first meeting, and Mrs. Means had said that the city offered 2 spots for memorial, and I asked where they are. And I guess I have to say that I felt like I was hit in the gut when it was back where nobody would see it. I thought in a place like New Prague, we needed to have it someplace where there's traffic, where people can stop, well, where it catches their eye as they're driving by. You know, I've been in so many areas, towns that have them, and it catches your eye and your mind goes directly to that. We have 800 veterans' names that we call off on Veterans Day. We have over 20, I believe, that were killed in action. And so for all these souls, I feel that we should have in a spot like we've been talking about. Ken did such a beautiful job at the park board meeting in presenting these pictures of what it would look like in that spot. And I have a son-in-law that works for the city, and I said if the power line needs to be moved, he said it doesn't. If there's anything else that needs to be moved, I'll pay for it myself, just so that it's in that beautiful spot by that library. I think it'd be probably my proudest moment to hear that we can put it there. We're gonna have an awful lot of work ahead of us because the figure is like in the 200,000 figure. And then from what you see here, we're also gonna have a soldier or someone standing there with a rifle, something that will catch people's eye as he drives by, probably right in the middle. The flags are gorgeous, but still it's something that you see in many towns. But you need to have something right in the middle there, in the middle of that star. And I called around today, and those things aren't cheap either. They're all made of bronze. And you want them made like that. I guess others might even be more expensive than bronze. And they're in that $40,000 range. And so that'll add to the cost of this, but it'll make us work that much harder. In talking to people about this, I think I probably talked about 100, and everyone says, what a beautiful spot that would be. And many were reaching in their pocket to put out money to give us for it. So I guess I could go on and tell you how important this is to us veterans. But I know that we have probably one of the better councils in the state. And the park board was so good to us. And so with that, I just say, well, God bless you all, and thank you.
Thank you, George. Anyone else have any other comments they would like to make on this? Okay, Ken, would you be so kind to kind of backfill us on a little bit of some of the...
Get back this one close here 1 second.
We're talking about an area like 50 by 60 feet. Right?
Yep.
So it's not a big area.
So I'm gonna kind of back up in discussion timelines a little bit. So the other locations that Mr. Tukey was referring to, this map in particular goes back to shortly after the Means family had been at the council meeting back in 2014. Staff had talked, it was mainly myself and Glenn Stika, on possible locations in Memorial Park that could accommodate what was actually a smaller memorial, overall size of about 38 by 46 at that time. So that's what these red boxes indicate on this particular map of Memorial Park. One was the existing memorial location where you have the Japanese cannon to be referred to. You also have the large sign, I guess you'd call it, this is Memorial Park. And then the monument that's existing in the park there. Another location that was looked at was just on the corner of 2nd Street North, or 2nd Street Southeast and Park Avenue. The issue with this was there's actually a storm sewer line that was in the area, not the best location. Another location that was looked at that time was actually directly north of the playground, and staff had talked about this, and the park board had at that time as well, that was an area that was kind of an active use area for just kids playing pickup football and being a little too close to the playground for keeping that safe from kids climbing on it and that type of area. So that was the discussion at that time. And the discussion that gained a little bit of traction at that time, and we had met with Paul Bush as well to discuss this in person, and had taken a look at how many trees might have to be removed, et cetera. And this is kind of the location looking directly down 2nd Street Southeast towards the area close to the ballroom, basically. So that was kind of the last area that was talked about, and that's the site that Mr. Tupi is referring to as being, not up front and center on Main Street. And I want to jump to the map that I had up for a second here. So we're going to zoom in here a little bit. So staff fully agrees that this is a beautiful location, right on Main Street, very visible. We do currently have the drinking fountain there, but the biggest concern we had for placement of the memorial in this area was existing utilities. I'm just going to go over the lines of the map. So we have a sanitary sewer force main. It's about a 6-inch sanitary line, which is located. And these are approximate locations. I want to know it's not survey quality by any means. We would certainly look into that further. But generally in this location, it had been rerouted. Correct, when we did the library edition?
That's correct.
And so the current location is generally, as you see here, it kind of was extended further into the park to avoid that small Tukulski reading room addition. So you've got that force main. And the other lines are actually a much older and much larger lines. We've got a 28-inch clay storm sewer line noted in green here. It kind of runs at the diagonal, and then off of that is a 12-inch clay storm sewer line. So it's kind of form a frame, so to say, around the area that they would like the memorial to go. The red box outline shows that roughly 50 by 60 memorial area. And I want to point that out because we've got these lines here, so while potentially physically the 50 by 60 area for a monument could fit, we can't really have the monument, if the lines were to stay, the utility lines were to stay underground, have them go right up to the line, because you need some area to work on them if they need repair, et cetera. So what we've drawn in here, and it's hard to see, is about a 10-foot easement area on each side of that line that would give room to work. And again, just based off the information that we have here without surveying it, without doing more ground locating, is that 50 by 60 size wouldn't fit in there and provide for room to repair the storm sewer lines. What would fit, it appears anyway, would be the smaller area that's about a 40 by 50. And again, this is all approximate. We just wanted to give an overview generally that there are utilities in the area, and they would have to be considered certainly as it relates to the location of the memorial. So you've got, again, the storm lines are probably the biggest concern for that area. There is also the drinking fountain area, which probably wouldn't even have to move. It's serviced by a 1-inch poly line that actually extends south to the concession stand and bathroom area by the softball field area. So that kind of gives an overview of generally the location, staff's concerned, but we would really want to do some more investigating on things such as condition of the lines, the exact location of them, to see really how much room is. We're just guessing that something of 40 by 50 would fit. We maybe are off on the location of these lines in this map. This is old mapping data that we have from some paper drawn maps that were digitized onto our utility layer. So I kind of put that out there that this is approximate, so just so everybody's clear on that. So there may be more room, there may be less room.
When we're looking at the 2020 street project, were any of these lines going to be redone any which way, Glenn?
No,
No, okay.
no, there was no plan to, at this point, to do anything with those lines going to the park. The park is actually considered a flood zone. So the park is there to handle the excess water after a huge rain event. So those lines, whether they're redone and moved, which is a possibility, which was not at this point a plan with the 2020 project, they'd still have to go into that park area someplace, but that is our holding area after a huge rain event.
Which is, if Ken moves the map up a little bit, we can go to the southwest corner of the park area there.
Yeah, this is go for the next map here.
But basically, the area outside of the two baseball fields there.
You can actually see the general line that would be where you'd expect the flooding to occur, and it does occur, kind of in this area here.
Depending on the size and the scope of certain rain events, that area acts as a storage retention pond during heavy rainstorms.
Mhm.
So, although that might have been a good one to recommend as a possible site, due to that storm event, and those are the ones that, only happen like 1 in 100 years, or, all those ones they say are a 3 or 4 inch rain, and then you get another 3 or 4 inch rain and follows that. Those are the kind of things that cause a backup in storm sewer piping. If it's not of sufficient size to accommodate those rain events, it backs up in the southwest corner of the park.
The other thing to point out as well is we do have a large electric feeder line that actually runs pretty much directly into the sidewalk groups.
Right.
In that area, which wouldn't necessarily be affected by the memorial, we just wanted to point that out as well. So that kind of gives a general overview. So from staff's perspective, certainly not opposed to it. I think we just want to do some more homework on what exactly we have and exactly where are they located in relation to the area. So that's kind of our take on it at this point.
Mhm.
I think this is far enough from the playground area in this location. This was really the area that the park board in the past had thought should be kept for open play, and we wouldn't want kids crawling around the memorial. I think that would be disrespectful on a number of levels, but certainly this would be very, very visible, and depending on how the Main Street reconstruction project reconfigures the area, it could tie in very nicely with that. So timing, I think, works very well as far as designing it to accommodate that, should this be a location that could fit. A few other considerations to note, aside from the location that staff just wanted council to think of, would be would the land be leased to an entity for the memorial? Who would take care of maintenance? Want to make sure there's vandal-resistant materials utilized. Should it ever be vandalized, we would hope that would not happen, but certainly that happens at the playground, so it is something to be aware of. Paying for future engravings, snow removal, insurance coverage, what would happen to the existing memorial area, etc. So just other things to think about as well as it relates to the new memorial proposal here. And I did want to call your attention to the letter from Mrs. Means, basically asking for the consideration of the council to have a memorial basically in the front part of Memorial Park for the visible location. And that is on the second page of the memo. So I did want to call that particular letter out as well. And as Mr. Tupy indicated, I think the general estimate, again, prepared by the architect that had helped provide some of these drawings that I had put up on the overhead wall, Mr. Kupi was talking, is estimated at about $225,000. So a pretty substantial investment for that as well. So ultimately, certainly we can discuss further, but staff's recommendation is to have staff basically look into this further, look into the utilities further. Further, we can answer any questions you may have, in addition to, things that we've talked about here tonight. And really to defer any final site selections so we can confirm exactly what we have. That's really the key thing. Not to rule it out at all, but just so we all know what we're dealing with.
Okay, are there other renderings that Mr. Lee wants to share with council?
Yeah, if, let me just get back to some of the renderings here. So again, this is generally the location, looking from Main Street, where the memorial, and you can see the rendering that Ms. Means has, that she's holding up, would be the intended view from Main Street. So I'm just gonna kind of run through these here briefly. So again, that's the drawing you see there. And just some other renderings that the architect had put together. So basically the wall with the names on it, and feel free to chime in, I'm not an expert on that.
Yeah, we'll describe it quickly. So the 5 pillars around that star. Those
If you want to come to the podium, maybe here for the.
Since it's going to be, it's on TV, so.
Which means you could bring that photo up and set it on the chair if you want there, and then you can come to the podium.
Just to describe the memorial, we have indicated the 5 pillars would be representing each branch of the military. Those would be for honoring the veterans, past, present, and then where we would have future names. The wall in the back, the center wall, that would be where we would honor those killed in action, so we would have their names listed there as well. The size of this is very negotiable. This is just our first draft. Everything around the outside are fundraising pieces, benches, places for plaques, famous quotes, things like that. So.
And what is the light blue and white composed of? Is that concrete or granite or what are you?
It was marble.
Well, on the ground here, it'll be most likely concrete.
Concrete.
Yes.
Mm-hmm.
And are you going to color that concrete or is it just going to be black gray?
Probably, well, that's yet to be determined.
Okay.
The star in the center, we're hoping that to be gold, representing Gold Star families. At this point, that's going to be for sure the only thing in color at this point. On each one of the pillars, there's a circle up here. Each one of the pillars, the top, what we're envisioning is that it'll be slanted like this, and we'll have the emblem of each branch. So for example, so this is the Army pillar. Rather than having paver stones and having people's names walked on, we thought it'd be best to put their names right on the actual pillar. So if you're Army, you go on the Army pillar, and so on and so on. And that's part of the fundraising.
Now, are those individuals killed in action that would go on that?
On this wall.
That wall.
The 5 pillars would be for veterans. So we want this to be open for not just those killed in service, but for veterans as well. So we can honor the service and the sacrifice that all have made. And like she said, it's all in the works of it. This is our first draft. The reason we had a lag in time is we went through 3 architects. We are on our second webpage designer, so that's why it's taken us so long to get to this point. It wasn't a lack of interest or motivation, it was just, we don't know how to do that. So it took us time to get this drafted. So that's our core for the foundation for it.
Mr. Chairman?
Mm-hmm.
And basically, this will be a floating slab. You know, we don't need foundations and so on. So even if there is something underground there, we're not gonna hurt it.
Okay. But the issue, the concern from staff isn't that the weight of the flowing slab is the problem, is if we ever have to dig up those storm sewers or sanitary sewers to replace that, we don't need to be digging through the monument and having to replace all of those pieces at a later date.
Right.
Well, like I said, you know, I'll even pay for that. I farmed all my life, I've done a lot of tiling. It wouldn't take a hell of a lot to come around.
We have also projected in our design for future growth. So we have, like we went through with the person who designed it on how many names can we fit on these pillars? You know, how much future growth can we project for this? And it was an astronomical number for each pillar. I want to say it was at least 200 names per column per side. So 400 names per.
So down this side, and on the back side.
So that was a consideration in our development as well, as how do we anticipate growth for this and accommodate it too. So we tried to hit all aspects on what we should anticipate for this.
And that would be considered veterans from the New Prague area? Is
Yes.
that how you would interpret that?
So we have a committee developed to decipher what do we want on our memorial. Different towns do it differently. Some are where you have to be within the location for 10 years. Some have different. So we, as a committee, haven't decided exactly the parameters, but we want it to be tied to New Prague.
Okay. I think it's beautiful. Any
Yeah,
other?
it's fantastic. Do you have a time frame on when you hope to raise this money, or?
We're hoping that it can tie in with the Main Street project, and that we can fundraise. We are starting fundraising those Inky days this year, and hoping to anticipate within 3 to 5 in that time frame there.
So does that give you time, Glenn, then to go and actually locate those lines instead of just using those old maps and kind of determine to see if there's a way that we can enable that in there? Because I agree, it should probably be up front. I mean, especially considering how beautiful it is, but I understand the concerns that you have with that, with those utility lines and stuff, but you said there was some ambiguity, Ken, in the lines?
We just don't know. I mean, we do have some better data, which I will be getting from your sanitary sewer. We're actually GPSing some utilities in. Storm sewer is not GPS to definitive location, so that's kind of the biggest unknown.
What's shown on those maps, those storm sewers are very, very close.
Are they?
The only way we'll get them any closer on a print is if it's surveyed, GPSed, and then also the site surveyed. That's really going to be the proper way of doing it. We're really pretty close with the drawings that Ken's got up there right now. So, yeah, as far as, just citing those lines, yeah, that's not a problem. We're also going to make sure that the Main Street project's not going to be a conflict with this, and that's a discussion that I'm going to start tomorrow at one of our meetings. So,
But I guess we have a little bit of time to dig
Yeah.
into it.
I think so.
I guess I would wonder, Glenn, knowing that those are clay tiles, there's not a long longevity with clay tiles. They have a tendency to deteriorate over time. Maybe it's time that you look at that and decide, should we replace it now rather than later?
But that's typically not needed unless we encounter a situation after doing an inspection, and we can run cameras through there to take a look at that. But we have no indications or concerns relative to their current longevity, and that to do it would simply be a council decision to do that at an expense that would have to be incurred to ensure that we didn't have to come back to reconstruct those at a later date.
Yeah, I understand all that, Mike, and that's, I guess, kind of where I'm going. After you survey that or have a camera go down there, you'll know what it looks like. And if anything looks questionable, I guess I would wonder, well, if we're thinking of doing something this expensive there, well, let's do the improvements now rather than later, because I agree with Sean. This looks like an almost ideal place to put this. And we've already violated, if you will, the easement by putting that sidewalk and fountain in there. That's right over the easement. So we've done it once.
But there's a difference before that drinking fountain and a sidewalk is minimal in nature as far as its invasiveness. When you start to go spending $250,000 relative to what's involved with this, with whether it's concrete, granite, marble, whatever it might be, that's where you would not undertake that construction and put it over something that we might likely have to replace at a future point in time. The other thing we want to point out, and as you look at this, that, you know, I think we've heard from staff that we're not opposed to this project. We're just trying to bring the realities of things to the table. And as you look at it, is that there will be some required maintenance and support of that. And Ken noted whether we want to identify a space that could be leased to the Legion and the VFW as it relates to this, because with the flagpoles, you're going to have maintenance on flags and other things of that nature. The other thing, whether you want to admit it or not, and bringing it out front and center, and we have that in the parks, and we have it in other places where you have buildings with these kind of materials, is one of the things that you invite to this location is skateboarders. And so while it's great to jump on board and to look at this, and I told Ms. Beans at the park, is that, you know, when we talked about this, is that, you know, there's nothing from our perspective where we're opposed or, you know, not desirous of seeing an event of this nature. But when you bring those things front and center, and depending on the locations that you bring them into that, is you also invite other users that may not have the same respect and caring for this type of area. And I know from personal experience in a number of cities that this is an ideal skateboarding piece, that you'll have that. And that will run contrary to different people's feelings. And so as you take a look at that, it is a public park, there is a play area adjacent to it, you've got a, you know, a fountain there, and I think as you take a look at that activity, whether you want to admit it or not, this could be an open invitation for some of that to occur, and you go through that expense. How are you going to take care of that, or how are you going to effectively enforce that?
Yeah, I understand that. It's happened. Skateboards have done a lot at private places and public places here in town in the past, so I'm well aware that that's ideal for skateboarders. So how you do that is you're independent of where it is, because no matter where it is, you're going to have that same issue. Whether it's right along Main Street or tucked by where the memorial is right now.
And the question is, who and or how are you going to deal with that if that does occur? If they go to the extent of building this and putting it out front and center, how is that going to be done?
George, oh, I'm sorry.
We had the same problem at church when we redid the front. We had skateboarders and so on, and then we put up signs, and that took care of it. I think that probably if we have something like this for the citizens to see, that maybe, you know, I just heard here a short time ago that 39% of our Americans are not patriotic. And that is just absolutely horrible. And these are the people, of course, that have no idea what it took to keep this country what it is. And as far as using a spot like that, I think is better by the street than in the back 40, where you just don't see.
Another question I have is, with the memorial where it is now, on the south side of the Memorial Park, who's that leased to? Who pays for all the improvements or upkeep or whatever on that part of the memorial? Is that leased to the VFW or?
We put up the pole, and like I say, that cannon is not American.
I know it's Japanese.
It wouldn't break my heart for that to go.
We replaced that a few years ago, and the VFW did participate with the contribution, but the city paid for.
I don't remember the figures, but yeah.
I believe, well, I don't want to guess, but there was a significant contribution by both parties to help reinstall and replace that flag when the base of that flagpole wore out. So,
Right.
you know, there's not a lot you have to do, and I understand the impact of the cannon, and I can't tell you the history of the knowledge, and I don't know, and that, yes, we do mow around it, and, you know, weed eat around it, and those kinds of things. But in taking a look at something of this scope and nature, that in the winter, as an example, you know, who's going to shovel it if people want it viewable, or is it going to be left untouched in the winter? And so we're just trying to raise the items and elements, is that, you know, we have a small limited park staff through the winter, and you know, know, as you take on obligations of this nature, is do you have the staff to take care of these elements? So all we want to do is point that out and determine that issue's going to have to be addressed up front. So,
Yeah, at least they don't have any open-ended cannon there where somebody, when I was a kid, threw a stick of dynamite down the barrel. That woke a few people up.
Dave, you shouldn't have did that. I told you, you shouldn't have did that, Dave.
Do it, but I
You know, if I may make another statement, as far as taking care of the snow and whatever it may be, we have our steak fries at the Legion every month. The Boy Scouts are always looking for something that they can do in this community. And I think if we talk to them, they'd be more than glad to take care of that memorial in winter, whatever care, the little care they would take.
And I remember, George, you said you're gonna pay for part of this, though.
Exactly, yes.
So it might be the kind of thing that in looking at it, if the council is interested in wanting to pursue this further, that we can refine through survey work, and we'll have to go get proposals to do that, to examine what would be entailed with that. You could take it an area of that, if we wanted to work with the Legion and VFW, that with their involvement, is that we do something to lease them that piece of property for $1, that goes on, you know, let them take care of through the lease arrangements. We try to work out those elements to ensure that those things are being taken care of, if you're gonna bring that out front and center, as Mr. Tooby has indicated. And so, like I said, we're not opposed to it, we're just trying to point out all of the factors that we think ought to be considered in the scope of making a selection or determination for that to go in that location.
So,
And I think a lot of that stuff is logistic stuff that can be easily worked out. I think the issue that I see is should we move forward in pursuing getting answers that is this the right spot for the memorial on Main Street? And, you know, the issues of who's going to shovel and that stuff, that's all logistic stuff that can be worked out. And I agree with you, George. I'm sure there's Boy Scouts who are looking for merit badges, and you know, even veterans who may feel that that's their duty to brush the snow off, you know, on a light snow and stuff like that. But that's logistic things that are easily to be worked out. I think the decision to be made is if we feel that we want to go forward with this spot, that we should maybe tighten the location of those pipes, and then maybe even kind of figure out what really, if we do have to move any, does it make more sense to do it when we do the 2020 project? Since Glenn, we will be redoing that sidewalk, correct?
Yeah, in fact, there was talk, nothing set in stone, that that's actually coming more to the south. So that's why I said that's the next group that I have to show this to and go, how is that going to affect the Main Street project?
Mm-hmm.
So,
Yes.
yeah.
So maybe after Glenn gets done with that meeting and they have a chance to determine what the status of those sewer pipes are, they can come back to us and we can make some further decisions.
Do we actually want to televise them, or do we want to just locate them at this point?
I think you just want to locate them. I think that's really the decision, because unless you know that there's something wrong with them, I can't imagine.
We do some repairs periodically on it.
Right.
That's typical for a clay pipe. You wouldn't label that pipe as being shot or has to be replaced today. Televising the line will actually probably tell you that. The unfortunate part with that is sometimes even the video won't show you the really fine crack, and you put a little bit of weight next to it, some pounding, some construction, and all of a sudden, then it's gone.
Right.
So, you know, those are all things we all know can happen. And that's the extreme. That's painting the worst picture.
How old is that? Do you know?
Is it older than you, Glenn?
It's older than me.
Well, you said that.
Then it is old.
That's the second pipe in this town that's older than me.
The Main Street's what, 90 plus?
Yep, Main
Yeah.
Street's gonna be 100 years old, or the pipe in Main Street's gonna be 100 years old come 2020. So this is probably pushing the same time frame. Be my wildest guess.
Okay. Any other comments?
I think it would I hope that it can work out for this spot. I think that would be a good visible spot as people drive through town and just for the community. So I would like to direct staff to do what they can to look at this further for this location, especially as we prep for 2020. It's a good opportunity to plan it now, whether they're ready at 2020, but at least have the prep work done so nothing has to be redone. And then work out the details. You said you have a committee. Who is that? Who is? What
So
is-
our committee is consisted of members from the VFW and the American Legion.
Okay.
So they're volunteered their time to help us with fundraising, kind of fine tuning our draft and things like that. So we have 7 members? It's
8 total right now.
8 total. We're approaching the VFW to add a couple more too, so.
Okay.
We want to include all populations within New Prague so that it's well supported by everyone.
And maybe when it gets closer, when it starts to move forward, to have a council or some city representative on the committee, maybe you could discuss too. That might help
That's a great idea.
with these.
Okay.
So we plan on selling shirts at Dozinski Day in Pancousie, so we've got that in the works. We're ready to go.
Thank you very much.
Well, thank you.
Thank you.
So Mike, I guess everyone in kind of an agreement of going forward on getting more information on the site?
Yep.
So,
Yes. Yep.
do you need a motion, Mike, or, what's that?
That would help.
Okay, I guess I'll make a motion to direct the staff to look at the site on Main Street and try to come up with issues that might result in the infrastructure under it.
I'll second that.
Second motion by myself, second by Dave Brusick. Any other comments? All in favor, say aye. Aye. Any opposition? Okay, passes. Thank
One more
you.
question. The lease part that is same as the ballroom, that's sitting on your ground also?
Correct.
Right.
Okay, the same.
In our thought process, that might be a little bit different, but along those lines, the Legion and the VFW are structural entities that are in place, exist. The volunteers from the family and others that would be incorporated in that when we talk about some type of lease arrangement for $1 or something, it's just a way to transfer that responsibility to the ongoing military entities that exist in the community, really at no cost, but it puts the framework and the structure that the two entities would agree to take over what's necessary to maintain, replace, or redo the things. And so we can work on something similar to what we have at the ballroom in some respects.
Okay.
Okay, thank you.
But we'll do that after we find out what the survey and the infrastructure looks like for the council to make that decision to move forward.
So how long will it take before we really have a go-ahead that we can start drumming up money? That's gonna be the biggest job of all of it.
You can drum up money anytime.
Yeah,
I started out.
all right. Then that's all.
Turn out the check.
Yeah.
Just write a check.
Easy, you can see what you get in a quarter of a million. Thanks, Sam.
Did I catch that correctly in the minutes that you will replace all of the underground infrastructure?
I will, yes.
The minutes?
My son-in-law will change the electric button.
That's gonna be on the weekend then, or what? Looks like you got your
Thank you very much.
Thank you for all your work.
Good, you used to be a politician.
Thank you so much. Thank you very much.
Thank you.
Okay, Ken, next on the
Just
agenda,
got remarried, so it's Andrea James.
it is
LEH.
ordinance from the Planning Commission.
Yes, so next item on the agenda is a zoning ordinance amendment.
Good luck.
Some of the council recalls, I don't know if all the council members got called about, and I'm actually going to put up a picture of the particular structure that kind of got everything started here. This rather tall red post and beam construction or pole shed building on Main Street that met all current ordinances and it gathered a lot of comments on how's it allowed that tall, how's it allowed that large, etc. So
Decided not to hide it, did they?
no, it's not hidden. Sorry, red.
Yeah, if they didn't pay, if it wasn't red, I bet you most people wouldn't have noticed.
Probably when they, right before the leaves came on the tree. So it actually did generate some good discussion at the Planning Commission when we addressed the issue back starting in May on the whole topic of residential accessory structures, and specifically the height, I think, was really the key thing that came out of our discussions at the Planning Commission meetings that we had. So our current zoning ordinance allows accessory structures, so not your house on a built property, but the accessory structure allows your accessory structure to match the height of the house on that lot. So that's what this particular homeowner did. They bought the house, it had a very small rundown, single stall, I don't even know if a car would have fit in it. And they built this nearly 1,000 square feet, I think it was 999 square feet. So we have 1,000 square foot limit in the code, and that generally isn't the problem, that's that footprint, it's just the height of this building, and it was allowed to be that tall to match the height of the principal structure, which was an older two-story type home. You match that with the narrow lots in the old platted part of town where this is located, and it just kind of sticks out like a sore thumb.
But I gotta say, it is done very tastefully, and they've done a lot.
It is certainly not an inexpensive.
Right, and they did a lot to the driveway and everything. I mean, it's not like they just threw up a shed on an alley and just said, here we go.
So that really got the discussion going. So just being the height, obviously, located there. So that led into other discussions on while we're looking at accessory structures is a couple of other things. So should pole sheds be allowed, or the post and beam type construction? So that was another point of discussion that was to be had. And then kind of the final one was there had been a amendment to the state building code that it used to be that if you had a structure 120 square feet or under, you didn't need a building permit for the state building code. That threshold was raised in the Minnesota residential code to 200 square feet and under. So we actually listed in our zoning ordinance that 120 square foot reference. So us and other cities are having to change that up to the 200 square feet. Just more of a housekeeping item for that. So I did want to note that the Planning Commission did hold a public hearing for the amendments to the zoning ordinance specific to the height, and also to discuss if pole shed type buildings were to be allowed. And discussion led to the direction from the Planning Commission to consider a 15-foot height limit on accessory structures regardless of how tall the house is on the lot. And that really matched what many other cities in the state, particularly in the area, have as a limit of 15 feet for the height. So you're obviously limiting, this building is nearly 20 feet tall. You drop that down 5 feet is more of your typical garage type height. So the 15 feet was one topic that was put into the ordinance as drafted. The discussion on construction methods basically led to questioning from the Planning Commission on if the state building code had standards for the exterior materials for roofing and siding. Noted that we didn't want somebody to build a pole shed out of old rusty barn reclaimed materials. And ultimately, we had a table at the June meeting and brought it back in July, but if you look at the packet, if you want to read the detail, out of the state building code, there are actually is a table for siding, if it's steel or other materials are listed in here, or the roofing as well, mill thickness, type of corrosion proofing, and how they are to be installed. So the discussion on if that type of construction and materials was acceptable, and basically it's no different than any other construction method, they all have to meet code. This is really irrelevant in talking to our building inspector as well, how the construction method underneath the skin is it all has to meet the same wind load, snow load, and ultimately meet state building code. So whether you call it a pole building or just a garage, it has to meet state building code and the materials for the siding and everything. So Planning Commission recommendation was that not to put any limitation on pole type buildings. Another item in there was accessory buildings and the garage door height. The code had read that you can't have, like on this red building, couldn't have a garage door opening height of more than 10 feet. That has limited a lot of people that have campers and RVs from parking them in their accessory buildings, because a lot of those are taller than 10 feet. Why we've had the 10-foot height limit on them, I don't know, especially when we were allowing 20-foot tall buildings. So I, from a staff perspective, think that if somebody has a building that can handle a camper or an RV and get it inside a building, that'll look better for the neighborhood as well. The Planning Commission also had that same feeling as far as the amendment. So that was really the limit of the discussion that we had at the Planning Commission meeting. That most recently was at the July 26th Planning Commission meeting. So they're forwarding the language as written in the proposed ordinance. So to reduce the building permit being needed, well, let me back up here. I'll just run through the changes real quick again for you. So accessory buildings over 200 square feet can't be more than 15 feet tall, so that's the garage like this, can't be more than 15 feet tall. Any accessory building 200 square feet or under does not require a building permit. I didn't put this up before, but if you're under that threshold, so it's 200 square feet or under, there's a 12-foot height limit for those buildings, and that really comes back to, again, that we don't need these unpermitted structures being extremely tall either, so we wanted to make sure they're a little shorter than the permitted ones. And then item E, post and beam constructed or pole buildings shall be allowed as a construction method if they're able to meet state building codes. So that's really the changes that came out of the discussions. But again, yeah, this building, I mean, this is a $30,000 plus garage. It meets all aspects. Other than that height was really the thing that got people worked up in this case. So I think ultimately that's really the main thing that came out of this was the building height's probably, and we haven't had too many people take advantage of that, but you can get situations like this where they just really do look out of place due to the height more than anything.
So if it's limited to 15 feet, would that exclude people from being able to build an accessory building that could accommodate an apartment or a studio or additional storage?
And that's actually an interesting point to bring up. So the zoning ordinance currently, and we've talked about this with the Planning Commission and Council, it's been, I don't know, maybe 6-7 years ago now, like a mother-in-law apartment or accessory dwelling unit. We don't currently allow those. Potentially it could affect those situations. Ultimately, what it would allow is almost a story-and-a-half type building. Some cities actually say story-and-a-half rather than 15 feet. So you could have it. It would be, you know, the case where you have kind of like in the older story-and-a-half homes where you've got dormers and, you know, a little bit more unique shaped rooms. So I don't know if it'd completely rule it out, but you have to probably be a little more creative with it.
Because I know that at least I've seen 2 other buildings in New Prague, one right by Memorial Park. The brick home has what appears to be a storage or apartment or a studio, right. And there's also one on First Avenue southeast.
Mm-hmm.
So, and I'm just wondering if that would prohibit people from being able to use their property to, you know, build additional living space for a family member.
Yeah, and right now those aren't allowed, so I do want to point that, that's a whole other topic of discussion that we have had before, but haven't gone down that road yet.
What about like in Prague Estates in there where someone bought the back lot and put just a garage on there?
Yep. So all those, so you're wondering how that...
Yeah, I'm just wondering how that happens.
So in all those cases where people have done it, they have purchased a separate lot. We do not allow an accessory building on a lot on its own. So what they had to do is actually combine that with their main property, make that all one larger lot, just like if, you know, in the case that I think one you're referring to, the house is on one road and the lot they bought
right
behind them. So it's kind of elongated. We have other situations in town where people simply buy the lot next to them, put the garage in that where it doesn't maybe look as different, I guess, but they have to combine them up and they cannot split them off. in the future side is now one lot, larger lot with an accessory building on it.
What
Some
was-
covenants wouldn't let, now, not city covenants, but some developer covenants don't allow that to happen. That particular example, Tukulski Acres, there are no covenants that say that you can't have an accessory building that large. Some neighborhoods, there are covenants that say that.
Yeah, but most don't. But again, I got about 6 questions here. One, I agree, it doesn't look as bad from the front. And I was kind of shocked at the outcry that there was in town there. But, so that one's 20 feet. What is that gray one right next to it, the neighbors? Is that what you were talking about, limited?
Yeah, this would be pretty close to it was probably 14 feet.
Okay. And then with the garage opening, if we extended that to allow campers or whatever in there, what happens if, what would be the height that you're thinking? 15 feet, did you say, for a garage door?
For the garage door height, we didn't want to specify that. It's just more what would you have to have different header sizes and things depending on how tall you make your opening. And rather than say that door couldn't be more than 12 feet, for example.
Right.
Just whatever could meet code.
And the state
Building code.
Okay, and the state building codes that you were referring to right here in the back page.
Yep.
Those are the minimum, right?
They are minimum.
So the city could invoke stronger than that minimum.
Oh,
That's a slippery slope to get into.
Why is that? You can't
Because
tell.
the city has adopted those codes as.
Yeah, we've adopted the codes in reference.
Right.
And they are, again, minimums.
But that can be changed, though. I mean, we could adopt new codes.
I'd have to look into exactly
I mean, and
what
the
the
reason I-
possibility if it's adopting a full new Prague residential code or if additional can be added. I don't know that answer.
Okay. Well, the problem that I have is that every year we get 1 or 2 of these type of situations, whether it's conditional use permits or something, and it upsets the neighbor. And a good example of, now, the top picture there, you can see the neighbor's garage right there, the gray one. It doesn't look that bad. But when you look at on the side through the vacant lot there, look at the size difference there. I mean, it disrupts the whole flow of the entire neighborhood. And to Chuck's point, with allowing somebody to buy a lot behind them and then extending that lot out and then just putting another garage there disrupts the entire neighborhood feel. And what I'm getting at is it does have an adverse effect on the neighbor's property when they go to sell. So, I like to try to balance individual freedom and whatnot, but yet not at the expense of the neighborhood. And that's what we seems to what often happens. I guess what I would like to do in a situation is to make it tight enough, whatever our code is, or ordinance, or whatever, make it tight enough that they could come to the planning commission and then ultimately the council, and different councils will have different feelings on every different thing, but at least give some discretion and allow neighbor input or whatever might be required to come up with some type of compromise. Like this might have been, instead of bright red, maybe it would have matched, it would have looked better if it matched the house. Or, I found it interesting, the one comment that I got, or a couple comments from different people is, what happens if they want to put a silo up? I mean, could they put a silo up in their backyard that's 20 feet high? Or now if we change it 15 feet high? And maybe not just one, maybe 2 silos side by side. I mean, there's nothing there's nothing to prevent.
You might call it a silo, but it would still have to meet the residential accessory code, or could it look like a silo, I guess.
Okay, well.
I think you mentioned building color. That's a very specific aesthetic item to get into.
Right, well, I'm just saying there has to be, I don't know what the correct wording is, and I find it hard to believe that there isn't other communities that haven't adopted something than just the minimum standards that are set.
For the building code, I don't know of anybody that's adopted anything as far as building code, additional provisions to that, other than fire-related provisions, which are optional, specifically optional portions of the residential code.
Okay, which would mean what? You
But I think-
require a sprinkler or something in there, or?
There's some, there's,
Okay.
I don't know specifics to that, but yeah,
But the concern I have, Ken, is that this, what is it gonna be next 6 months from now? As every year that I'm on here, there seems to be a situation where Chuck's situation, this situation, conditional use permits where they promise one thing and then, or we have an envision of something and it turns, I don't wanna prohibit people from building the stuff they wanna build on their land. I just wanna make sure that it makes sense. And a lot of people didn't think this makes sense, and it doesn't really bother me, surprisingly, as much as other issues. But, it comes to a neighborhood flow and it comes to a community standard that we're not adversely affecting other people's property.
Yep,
And something like that does, in that one side picture, when you look through that back alley and you see that monster sitting next to the gray, this big red monster sitting next to, or the beige one right there.
I think that's why we have brought it forward here for tonight, because there certainly are valid concerns, and I, from staff levels, had concerns. I don't know when that provision was put into place where the council at that time determined that accessory buildings should be allowed to be as tall as the principal structure. I don't know the discussion, how that led to that. It's been in place at least since year 2000, which is basically the bones of our current code. I did not go back to see if it existed prior to that. I would guess it probably did. So at some point, the council had made that decision to do that.
Right, and I'm sure that.
And this is the first one that's triggered, so we've got at least 17 years till somebody said, boy, that looks funny, and there was a number of people that called that out.
Well,
so you're always going to get people that are looking to get the most out of their property, let's say, and meet the code without having to come do a height variance, for example. And you can still get people that could apply for a height variance if they had a valid reason.
And then come to council and planning commission with some plans drawn up and say,
this
is what I want to do, and then make them stick to it. But and I don't even need to tell you the couple of instances that we've had, but there's been instances where they've told us one thing and this is how they're going to do it and this is how they're going to dress it up and how nice it's going to be, and then it never gets done. And we've already issued the conditional use permit. There's really no teeth behind it. And
I think yeah, the couple you're referring to there is specifically items that they mentioned they would do. They weren't in conditions approved by the council. So I think, yes, ultimately that comes back to what's in those conditions.
Yeah, and I just want to have some teeth or something that future councils or future planning commissions can make sure that it makes sense for the neighborhood. And,
One of the challenges, Sean and I have Kim maybe talk a little more about it, is that as you take a look at a couple of things that come into play. Number one, whether in different residential areas you have covenants that are created by the developer that are only developer or property owner enforced, that are not the responsibility of the city to enforce. Those come into play in different residential neighborhoods differently. But number two, what you've got of trying to standardize and develop this perfect utopia where you draw these standards that affect everybody, the difficulty you have, and that's where your variances and CUPs come into place, is you're dealing with some of the lots, and I think, Ken, is this in part of the Old Town and the...
This is one of the older
size of
plots.
some of the lots in and around the downtown that existed when the city was originally platted. And you look at the lot width and the lot depth, and then you take a look at a number of the newer residential subdivisions that are built and how some of those lot sizes have changed or are different. It's very difficult to develop one complete set of standards that's going to take care of everything that you would like to do because of those differences where you may have long, skinny, rectangular lots versus those that are a little bit wider and deeper in the newer residential subdivisions. And so it's very difficult, I think, from Ken's perspective as a planner, to try to develop carte blanche, a set of rules and regulations or minimum codes that aren't going to come into play differently depending on what the size of those lots are throughout the community.
And I would say, I think the direction we're heading here by limiting the height to a lower standard still does provide that opportunity for those that want to exceed that. They can apply for that variance. That does force them to come in front of the planning commission and council and state their case again to do that. I think it was a little bit too much to have this provision in there, and most people, I think, would, from an aesthetic standpoint on their own property, look back and go, boy, that might look a little funny, but this particular person did not apparently feel that way and thought I'm within that current code provision, I'm gonna build that.
Do you understand my anxiety though? What's gonna be next? I mean, what
there's
else
always
is,
something.
what aren't we saying that every other community here, you know, maybe more, even more, a little bit more metropolitan community is doing to make sure that there's some kind of uniform standard? Because like I said, it seems like something like this creeps up every 6 months and it's,
And each community
and
kind
it's a
of,
big issue.
And I don't think it's gonna stop. Even if you think you could put an ordinance in that's perfect,
Well, I'm not
ain't
asking
gonna
for
stop.
perfect.
Well, no, but I'm just, you're not gonna get away from this. You, like you said, you're gonna have different planning people on the planning commission, you're gonna have different councils, and their interpretation of what they want. You know, you get some councils that, hey, it's person's property, let them do what they want. I don't wanna, you know, they feel, a lot of people feel they're governed so much already. You're gonna get a council that says, I don't wanna govern them anymore, I want them just to be able, if it's their property, put it on there. Yeah, so you're gonna, it's always gonna be a constant change. And obviously, that's why you get the state statutes and the state guidelines change also, because, you know, times have changed, materials change. You know, you can put something up a lot lighter with better material and be higher, and it's a better, you know, building than something 30 years ago with the wood and that stuff and the weight restrictions and things like that, so.
No, and I agree, Chuck. I mean, every, you know, different councils, different planning commissions, whatever, but let's let them make that choice if there's that aesthetic feel, and let the neighbors weigh in on it, and let the, you know, instead of just letting any farm, you know, any homeowner, any property owner do whatever they want. I mean, I can't put 55-gallon drums of, you know, horse manure and line them up my driveway, even though it's my personal driveway, you know? I mean, what I'm saying is, and that's an extreme example, but what I'm saying is that there just should be some type of community standards that before something like this happens, or before any type of building or code or permit or anything is issued, is that maybe it has to come, if it's anything outside of the norm, or it looks like it's gonna be controversial, and I don't know how you write that in an ordinance, that should go to the planning commission and ultimately to the council that can take some feedback.
But that's gonna be a personal interpretation.
And that's what our ordinance are trying to do, is set a standard.
And,
then
but it's been
create-
failing though, that, you know,
Well,
every
that's how
6
that,
months.
that was how that ordinance was written though. So now it's been
Right.
reviewed again. There's always gonna be something new that comes up. But
I'm
as
sure
long
there-
as we have a strong standard, which I think this will prevent it in the future.
Will prevent this, you're right, Amy, I see where you're going with it, and I agree with you. I mean, we can change this. But I just have this anxiety, like, what is the next thing that I'm gonna get phone calls on? Because it's happened numerous times, and it goes back to, I think we need to look at we need to be proactive and not reactive, is what I'm saying. And I don't know what that means, if that means going through a comp plan, if that means going through the different ordinances or whatever, but we're always reacting to these things, and we're not proactive, and it just upsets neighbors. And we can go around to about 6 different places, and I can tell you the neighbors around there that over my 6 years on the council, that something like this has popped up, and it's, you know.
So are you suggesting that the building ordinances just be revisited and reviewed to determine if they're outdated or?
Well, I will tell you, we did do that with the comprehensive plan in 2012. With that, there was recommended changes in that, and we have made those changes. I can't tell you exactly the number of changes since I've been here in 2004, but I think we've probably done 20-some zoning ordinance amendments, and a lot of that's based on training I've been to, just observations from past experience, feedback from other communities. I go to biannual meetings with other planners in the county. I can tell you that there are things that we've got in our code that Shakopee has adopted. We look at their code and there's things we recommend. So, you know, nobody's gonna have the perfect one. I think things change. There are people that push the envelope that will force to look at old provisions that were adopted that were acceptable at one time that may be found not to be, like in this case. And I certainly think there's gonna be other cases, mother-in-law apartments, were they palatable 5-6 years ago? No. Will they be palatable to a future council? Maybe this council, maybe. But it's currently not in the code today. So yeah, there's always things to change.
Well, and I agree, and I think you're at the right point. It's been 2012, so it's been 5 years. At that time, we looked throughout the entire comprehensive plan, not just, I mean, housing was just one segment.
Yep.
We looked at the entire thing, which, to be honest with you, was very overwhelming. I mean, I didn't have half the time to spend on that comprehensive plan as I would have liked, let alone just the one section on housing or whatever we're, going to be discussing. But maybe it is time to review that. I mean, we are talking about setting August dates here for how we want to proceed with 2018 budget and, reviewing and discussing projects. We have a new council member on that obviously changes the dynamic a little bit, so.
But I don't think there's any way that we can insulate you from never getting phone calls, never having controversies. That's always a part of the elected office and the seat that you hold.
Absolutely.
Is as things change. And so, from the work that Ken just described, that we try to stay modern and up to date on those kind of things. As soon as you go through and make one set of changes, there's all new things that are going to come in that may impact that same set of code requirements that you just adopted.
I just think I understand that, and I'm not afraid of phone calls, and I have disagreements with constituents, and I'm in favor and in agreement with the majority of constituents. What I'm saying is, though, I think we can do better. That's all I'm saying, because this always seems to creep up, and now we're in another situation after the fact, and I'd just like to be a little more proactive. I have faith in city staff that maybe we should relook at it. Maybe it's just one section of the comprehensive plan every year.
Well, I don't know that looking at the comprehensive plan would necessarily address that. I think you'd almost want to go through the zoning ordinance, but again, there's any number of changes I certainly would like to see. I'm not suggesting everything that I come across because I don't know if that is something the council would deem should be changed, is controversial, or could be a problem. Are there things that functionally don't work correctly? I'll give you an example. So the fence variance that we looked at over by the strip mall, that was kicked back to the planning commission based on council input to take a look at our fence provisions. How that'll end up, I don't know. Will they want some suggested fence regulation changes that'll come to the council? Possibly. But that's something, again, that came out of discussion we had and a very specific situation. So do you change the code for that one situation, or is it just a situation where that was very unique and dealt with on its own, which we did through a variance? But so that's always a question, and I wish I had a crystal ball and could tell when everything was going to be controversial as well. But I personally think, is our code perfect? No, not at all. Are there things I'd like to change? Every day I see things in there that could be different. There's just not enough hours in the day, and I don't think we're the only city that would say that as well. But I think it's pretty good code.
Maybe we should hear those when you go through and you see these changes. You should bring those forward and say, hey.
I don't think I've run into anything that if there was anything like that's a deal breaker and going to cause legal issues or destroy a neighborhood. Certainly, I've brought those forward. Do we have anything in there now that I think is a major concern? I really don't at this point. There's little things here and there that might come up. New technology, solar panels is a big one that a lot of cities are adopting. I know Belplain has provisions. We do not at this point. So there's always new things out there, and is it something the council wants to take hold of? I don't know, but yeah, we can look at anything. I think there's always going to be amendments that could be made to make it better. But overall, I think we have a very solid zoning ordinance. I do want to note that. I like our zoning ordinance. I think it's very workable. I think it provides flexibility with the conditional use permits and variances as cases arise. Do some unique situations come up from time to time? Certainly. I could tell you for a fact we have a garage that is this tall in another neighborhood in town, and I'm not going to point it out, but it does not stick out like a sore thumb because the lot is 3 times as wide.
Okay.
And it's also cold.
Well,
Yeah.
and when we talked about it before, I mean, what happens if someone wants to put up a windmill, to generate?
allow it.
I mean, you read it in the paper all the time, Orno, people are going nuts because they'll hear it spin it all night long, I mean, I just, you know, I'm just trying to get ahead of these things so we don't, I don't mind the phone calls when they come in, but, you know, what I do hate is when they look at us sitting up here and going, how did you let this happen? Or how did this happen? Or how don't you guys have a clue? And that's some of the stuff I get, and I'm sure these guys do too, you know.
But in answering that question, that Ken just described, the process that we go through to amend and take a look at it, and as I just described, we can take a look at different lot sizes and different parts of the community based on the age and when they were originally planted and all of that, is there is no perfect way to write a zoning code, a comprehensive plan to eliminate any questions or issues that are gonna come. And so if you ignore it, you stick your head in the sand, and you don't periodically look at that and update it and do those kind of things, then yeah, then the answer is true that.
Okay, let's just use this example again. I think it looks very nice. It doesn't bother me as much as it did some people in town. But when the building permit comes in and you see that it's twice the size, or the building inspector goes out and looks at it or measures it or something, when that permit comes in, there should be some type of provision that even if it's just the direction from the council to the staff and to the building inspector or whatever, that's saying, you know, there could have been a compromise here. It could have, you know, you could have suggested a different color. Not that maybe the guy legally had to do that. Maybe red's his favorite color, I don't know. But, you know, there could have been, if somebody would have raised that saying, you know, this is gonna, I'm not saying it's wrong, but would you consider 18 feet instead of 20, or 15 feet instead of 20?
I can assure you.
Or whatever, just suggesting that, not that the guy would have to do it, but just, you know.
We had many conversations with this individual. He actually pulled a permit to do the foundation last fall.
Okay.
To get that in. We had many conversations on the placement of the building, or that floating slab, and orientation. This direction got a long direction, turning it the other way, where doors could or couldn't go. All the while noting that he wanted to go over 1,000 square feet, which we don't allow. So that's why it ended up at 999. And I think, you know, our discussions led to where it is here today, which still met the code. I think from that point, there's really nothing more we can do.
Well, no, I agree, you know, and maybe the guy just said, no, this is what I'm building because this is what the code says, you know, and if you guys don't want to change the code or be proactive about the code or whatever, be a little more restrictive of it and require planning commission approval or city council approval, that's one thing, but I just want to make sure that, you know, the suggestions being made, and again, I'm one voice out of 5, so.
But I think what you run into though, Sean, is if someone reads the code,
right,
and they follow by the letter of the law,
right,
there's nothing you can suggest or anything, and to even say, well, I think you should go to the council on that. He's going to say, no, I'm doing it within code. So what they're saying now is let's change the code.
right,
But not saying that we change the code, someone's going to do something under this code that's going to be piss off a neighbor, and they're going to say, well, why the hell did you do that?
Right.
Well, we just changed the code so it couldn't be 20 feet, it can only be 15. But there's always going to be something that's going to come up.
okay.
And that's just my opinion again. I mean,
No, I understand what you're saying, Chuck. You know, the thing is I just think we could do a little better because this seems to keep popping up once or twice a year, and it disrupts the entire neighborhood.
Well, I think
What you
if
described as far as the color, how would we write a zoning ordinance requirement that dictates what?
I'm not saying we dictate. Mike, I know what you're trying to say. My point is that.
But I mean, so then, what, if you're saying let's be proactive, well, tell Ken which ordinance you want to look at.
I don't know, I want to look at the whole entire, I want to look at the comp plan.
Well, you can look at the comp plan, but the comp plan is not ordinances.
Okay.
Comp plan is, you know, how big the city, what's the footprint, all the stuff. We got parks in place, all the stuff. The ordinances, how building permits and all that are different things.
Right.
But you can't even tell us what's the next one we should look at to be proactive.
I want to look at it, I just said, I suggest we maybe go through them at this 2018 planning meeting.
Go online, go look at one and pick one out then. Don't sit there and say, we have, you know, you're making it sound like we have to do it. Ken goes through it and he says, overall, I'm confident in what's going on.
Okay.
There's little tweaks, and there's gonna be little tweaks, but, you're saying, let's be proactive. Well, if you're gonna be proactive, well, then you better research the whole codes and say, I don't like this one, this one, and this one. And what you're saying is you're gonna give that to staff who doesn't have time to do it.
We did a pretty major rewrite in 2010.
Right.
I do want to note that. And then we did the comp plan amendment, which called out a couple more specific zoning ordinance amendments after that time. And, that's as specific as the comp plan is going to get. But,
Right.
yeah, we certainly, when we see things that need to be changed, they're changed.
Yeah.
Okay.
And I
Well,
guess
to me,
that's-
it seems like we could be a little bit more proactive so this type of stuff doesn't happen. And you're right, Chuck. You know what? You're absolutely right. I should go through and read those ordinances and put them on this, because I can add anything I want to this agenda, and we can discuss it. But it doesn't do me any good to come through if I don't have the other 4 votes here, if nobody feels like this seems to be an ongoing problem. And that's fine, because you can take the phone calls, and when it pops up, I have no problem giving them your guys' phone numbers as well, saying call them. But I know you heard from several people on it as a fact, because they told me they contacted you first on this, and I can only assume the other council members have heard it.
The only one I heard was from Craig Sindelar. That was the only person that talked to me.
Okay.
I had probably half a dozen calls on this.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And I, driving by, I never noticed it until someone said something.
Okay. I didn't notice it either. I had to leave my house and go drive by to see her, so.
But, I understand, you wish that we could govern and be proactive, but I don't think you really can, because you're never gonna have everything covered in every instance that could happen in a city. When you're dealing with neighbors, when you're dealing with different personalities, when you're dealing with, different sizes, lots and everything, I think that's where the tough part is. I mean, if you built a city today and you had every lot the same size and house was the same thing, yeah, you could do that. And, that's why you have more success with a lot of the ordinances in maybe newer development. But when you have an older core community and you have small lots and they stuff and they put stuff on there, and pretty much when they're done, they got probably about the size of this green paper to cut the yard. As a neighbor, do you like that? Well, probably not. People like to have green space around their house and things like that. But, I think to what Mike and Ken are saying is there's so many variables out there. There's no way you could have a
I wasn't expecting perfection. It just seemed, like I said, this pops up once or twice a year. It just seems like we could maybe do a little bit better and make sure we're being a little proactive as opposed to reactive. And here's just another example of something that happened that now we're reacting. Now we're,
Right.
but it's already built. It's already done.
Right, but as
The
they
little square
said,
box across the street from St. Wentz, we were told that was gonna be all dressed up when that White House burned down, and they tore it down, but they wanted to fix it. And now you got this big gaping gap where we had an opportunity to maybe dress up Main Street, but now you got a square little box that doesn't really fit into anything and kind of throws off the whole thing. I mean, that's just one of them.
but there's another facility or piece of equipment or building the same size and same thing in another area of town that on a little bigger lot. And you probably never got a call on that.
No, but I was gonna say, what happens if we would have, the last time this popped up, 6 months ago or something, where we were looking at changing an ordinance? What happens if we would have caught this? If we reviewed it, we caught this, and we changed this, and think of the aggravation it would have prevented.
But looking at it, if I would read this ordinance, I wouldn't have thought that there would be a problem with it until you visually see it on a certain area.
And that's part of the reason that I haven't gone through, because I'm not the professional to read that ordinance, because I also am not a builder or a planning director or whatever. So I have a tough time envisioning it as well. So that's really why I wanted to maybe look at all these, have somebody that knows that, maybe the building inspector here, and then tell us, this is what this means, this is what could happen, this is what, and be proactive on it so these don't keep popping up. And we've discussed it long enough. I didn't want to go 40 minutes on this thing, but I get it. I'm just saying, I wanted to be a little more proactive on it. I thought maybe we could, as a council, work on it. There seems to be some disagreement there. I don't know, I can start going through the ordinances and take a look at one or two every day and read through them and try to visualize it. If I have any questions, I'll call Ken, and if we need to, we'll put it on the agenda. I guess that's where we're at now, so let's move on. I'm tired of it.
I move to approve the introduction of ordinance amending section 711.
And I'll second that.
The first reading?
Reading, yes.
First reading, and second by Sean Ryan. Any other comments? Okay, all in favor say aye.
Aye.
Any opposition? Okay, passes 5-0.
Thank you.
Mike, are you going to take the next one?
Yes, I will. Call back in April, we came to you with a change that you approved, which was taking a position that we already had administrative utilities over on the utility side, where it was a three-quarter position, and you authorized it to go to full-time. We were able to do that because of changes that were occurring in the street, and police department to be able to absorb that change. We went through a process where we originally had about 40 apps. We did about 14 phone interviews, 9 face-to-face. One final interview made an offer. The person chose not to accept it. We reconsidered the other 8 semi-finalists that we had. Ultimately, chose not to extend an offer to any of those candidates. And finally received one additional app here before we chose to go back out to potentially have to re-advertise for the position. That was the lady enclosed in here. We reviewed, pointed her like we did all the other ones. Her name is Ulschmid. She's got in excess of about 20 years of administrative experience. I tried to put together a brief summary for you to take a look at. Currently, she's working for both Maggie and Burnsville. Prior to that, I spent almost 9+ years with Gardner and Gardner Communications here in Prague. That would be Dan Gardner for those that know him, and also worked with Christy Mock. Before that, she worked at Integris, Chaska, in a number of different positions. We had Patty, Bruce, and myself that were involved in all of the interviewing for this process. It was challenging as we try to take a look at this new position, but as we spent time with our interview with Ms. Ulschmid, she appears to possess the administrative skills, the organizational skills, strong people, customer service skills, great attention to project and work details, as well as strong in her computer proficiencies. As a result of that, and part of this, as we've seen, we're working on, or have since the first of the year, I think this is about the 9th position that we will be filling since the first of the year. We've got 2 more at present, the water operator and the electric lineman that we have, or will have out to advertising. So we'll take a look at that. We've gone through the process with either retirements, individuals choosing to take other jobs, other situations, as well as some new different modifications. Like I said, we've got about 9 of the 50 positions in the organization, and by the time we add the other 2, we will be up to about 11, or about 22% of changing the workforce for the city. Historically, we've got a great stable workforce, and so as we looked at trying to fill this, we also wanted to make sure that we were bringing in an individual that had the skills and competencies that we think can work with the other leaders that we've hired, which have changed up completely since I've been here. We're on utility, the finance department, the utility building, the front office staff, and everything. So between Patty, Bruce, and I, we're recommending that Barb Ulschmid be hired based on the recommendation I have contained in my memo to you. You can delete the contingency items on the physical exam and drug and alcohol testing. Those have been completed and successfully passed, so those are not an issue. So I have no reservations on the recommendation at this time.
Okay. Anyone have any questions?
Looking at an August 20th start date. So shortly after that, then she'd be sitting up here, starting to take council minutes, probably beginning in September.
There's no questions. I guess I'll make a motion to approve the appointment of Barbara. Ulschmid,
Second.
second by Sean Ryan. Any other comments? If not, all in favor say aye.
Aye.
Any opposition? Okay, passes 5-0. Next, calendar. Now, Mike, does the tax levy have to be in by the end of September?
No, September 30th.
End of September.
I'm sorry.
You said no, it's September 30th. I thought, okay. Yes, so it's, but we always like to have it in that second meeting. We like to approve it.
We used to, until a couple of years ago, we had to have it adopted prior to September 15th.
Oh, that was right.
And then they changed the law a couple of years ago to allow it to go to September 30th.
Okay. So really the goal is if we could get our levy by the 18th.
Correct.
Would be the ultimate goal then, okay? So what do you thinking, one meeting, two meetings?
Well, in the discussion, I think it was Councilmember Jurek that asked the question as to before we come in with the preliminary property tax levy, would it make some sense for the council to have some discussion and debate and interaction about what might be coming, so that if there are any thoughts from the council that needs to be incorporated in that preliminary property tax levy, that we've had the opportunity to do that versus trying to review that with you and adopt it in the same evening. And so whether that's sometime here in August or the first part of September, it's wanting to take a look at your schedules, that isn't what has historically been done, and that doesn't mean that we can't change and take a look at it. It's just a matter of getting the council to choose to participate, that the preliminary budgets come into my office or to finance here on August 15th, that we will begin to try to assemble a preliminary draft that we'll take a look at. In the process of taking a look at it, I just got materials today from Scott County that gives me an idea of what our tax capacity looks like, so I can begin trying to figure out what that's going to look like from a property tax standpoint and what our range of options might be within that. So until we get the general fund budget assembled, those pieces that affect the tax levy, what I pointed out in my memo, is the general fund, debt service, and the EDA right now are the only elements that really affect that. So when you take a look at that in the general fund, that's all of the service related to police, fire, streets, parks, library, all of those kinds of things. The debt service has historically been whatever the existing and outstanding debt has been. Do we have any projects that we need to incorporate into that? We've not added any street CIP projects here recently, so we haven't had to change the existing debt picture. And if you recall, for planning purposes, we've tried to keep it at or around about that $1 million mark, plus or minus slightly in that area, just so that we had some kind of level debt, so we weren't having that bounce up and down significantly. The EDA has been relatively flat and fixed at a small amount. So we no longer have, last year I think we had the discussion of no longer the tax levy for the chart tax abatements, that's no longer in the mix, so that's not included. We made a slight modification when we adopted the levy last year. So it's just a discussion on maybe taking a look at it. Are there any projects or issues or questions or concerns from a visioning standpoint, from the council's perspective, that you'd like to just flush out and have some discussion to make sure that are we planning to include this or not, so that when we bring that preliminary levy to you, that we're not bringing it at a time where you don't have sufficient opportunity to have input. I think is what you were asking for, was not me.
Yes, yeah, just sort of have our goals so that we know what staff needs, what we vision moving forward, and to have more of the work done for the preliminary, and then the final, we just know if there's things we need to cut, what to cut in the final. Is how I would vision it working.
And that might take more of a major rework of our schedule to try to do that. Typically, we've worked it where, and I say typically because that's what's been acceptable and what the council's wanted, we've changed the process quite extensively since I first came in about 9 years ago. And it doesn't mean that it can't change, but that was what was acceptable and palatable to the council. then, and that's generally been followed for the most part, but it doesn't mean we can't have change. And so as we look at that, there may be pieces that we try to do this year that may necessitate an earlier discussion with the council from a planning or visioning standpoint on an annual basis to make sure that those items are in the department's hands, besides what they might be recommending before we start to assemble that. But we try to get budget materials out to them about the 1st of July if we've got the first 6 months of actual through the course of the year. And then they start budget planning, which gives them about 6 weeks to submit documents to my office before we begin to take a look at that. And the council, after setting the tax levy, begins their review in earnest in October, November. And that's been the historical process.
And I think too, like, for council too, to discuss, like on park board, we've talked about some major things that need to be done. And the park itself can't do it, but how can we combine that and plan for it in the future? How does council want to proceed with those plans of what needs to be done? To have that discussion before, so we sort of know where we all are.
And then it still comes down as you include those capital expenditures from either a park want or wish list to the council having a discussion. Still bottom line, how does it prepare and interact with all the other departmental requests from streets to police to fire to whatever? And then what does that all translate down to the bottom line tax revenue wise?
So just looking at this, like I don't know if it's feasible for everybody else, like the other Mondays, the 28th or the 11th. The 28th probably would, the 20th and 11th is what I was.
Did you say that again, Amy, which days?
The 28th and the 11th, the other Mondays. Not that it needs to be both, but maybe one, and if we need more discussion. And then that still gives, time before the 18th.
So you want to have an initial on the 28th, and then at that meeting, we'll determine if we need to have another one the 11th.
That's what I'd suggest, but it's up to the rest of you.
So the difficulty is going to be is that I'm not going to have probably a final completed, those come in on the 15th, and Patty and I will be working with the staff to put together the preliminary budget, the preliminary tax levy based on what we generally see, taking a look at the revenues and the capital expenditures and all of that. And so I don't know if that will necessarily all be ready to go by the 28th. Typically, we've had that at the first meeting in September. And that's what I give you kind of that general overview. But it's a question of, what it is you wanted to have ready and available on the 28th. Is that general discussion or just?
Well, I think what I interpret Amy's saying is she would, to come up with maybe more principal goals and things done that the council wants to look and say, okay, if the park is saying, well, we need to do this, this, and this, where would that fit in? Or if, the EDA wants to do something different, or maintenance, Glenn, type of thing, I think it's not so much going through the line by line, but more the big picture, saying that, these are some of the goals that we want to do in the next 5 years, and how do you accomplish them? Does that make more sense?
Yes, yeah.
Because I don't think we, even when we go through the budgets line by line, I think a lot of that is really kind of, it's good, but it's not like, we really need to see every line item per se. I think the big picture things that we need to look at are, from a standpoint is, okay, obviously we're probably not going to do another street project next year because we kind of decided we're going to wait till after the 2020 project. How do our capital equipment needs going forward? Is there any changes in that, or do we have to, did a piece of equipment die that all of a sudden, wasn't planning for next year and things like that, and look and say, okay, if this accomplishes what we're trying to do.
And like the golf, the clubhouse, what is that for the next 5 years? I mean, those type of things, what are their specific needs, or where do we see the capital improvement on some of the buildings or projects?
You know, or where do we fit in demolishing the armory? You know, is that something we want to pursue now, or do we want to say, you know, by 2020 we want that armory gone, and how do we accomplish that? You know, I think that's the stuff that Amy's talking about. You know, not going in, you know, you and Patty should go through the line items and question, you know, this and this, or, you know, okay, medical insurance is going to be up 2%, you know, well, you know, that's not really a council, doesn't have a goal that, well, yeah, your goal is to, you know, obviously have no percent increase, but it's really out of everyone's hands. You know, it's.
I guess looking at the bigger picture as
Right.
council.
So to the point is, you know, we don't, you know, you and Patty can probably have, you're perusing to a point where we can say, okay, you know, we want to look at capital equipments, we want to look at facility needs, you know, like, you know, demolishing the armory. What about the asbestos issue at the golf course? You know, that you know, those kind of things. How are we gonna, you know, handle those bigger issues?
The outdoor swimming pool.
Yeah, well, that's true. You know, that's going to be an issue also. You know, so do you understand, Mike, kind of where we're coming from? It's not a, you know, we don't need to have that budget, all the T's dotted, or the T's crossed and the I's dotted, but we need to say, okay, you know, here's a first good pass at the budget, and this is what it includes. You know, is it doing what we want it to do?
Or if we agree to what's should be done in 2 years, 3 years, 5 years.
Right. You know, even though it's this year's budget process, let's be, you know, thinking a little ahead of, you know, and I think we have been doing, I think it's getting better every year with, you know, the CIP projects laid out, and we can look at them all and like saying, okay, this is the big number type of deal, and really the 2020 one's kind of like the unknown right now. You know, we kind of can have an estimate of what it's going to cost, but you know, maybe we kind of look at it and say, well, you know, let's not try to do any major equipment purchasing or anything in 2020 to soften the blow. And it also goes with your schedule when the debt starts dropping off too. And I think that was 2021 is what I recall. But I think that's what Amy is asking for. She's not looking at to do the nuts and bolts of everything.
And I didn't take it that way.
Right. She's just more, let's, you know, as a council, we want to kind of see certain things happen, and how do we make those happen?
And it may be, as we try this year, it may necessitate a modification of the process and moving it farther back and to enable that to work better as we come down to this time frame. So as long as the council understands that this is a first year stab at trying to make this change and to do this and to see where we need to amend or change the process, that, you know, maybe moving something earlier in the process before we get to the September levy may cut down on the amount of time meetings we need in October and November.
Correct.
The adoption process is still going to have to be the same. We have to certify the levy by the end of September, but maybe establish and take a look at some of that picture may change the number of meetings that we need there.
Right. And you basically hit a lot of the nail on the head with a lot of the things about the chart's gone, you know, where you already got our tax value. I mean, you got the big pieces already. It's just a matter of the departments coming in, and, you know, if any of them are throwing any curves, or if it isn't, you know, you probably got a good handle. Huh?
And at this point, I haven't seen any of those yet.
Well, I know, they're all kind of probably waiting for the last minute on the department heads. Right, Glenn?
Wasn't there a list developed a couple years ago at the planning meeting?
Yeah, we can provide that update.
Yeah.
We can have an update as to where those are all at.
Okay.
Yeah. So should we shoot for the 28th? Is that fine with everyone? 6 o'clock? Does that work for everyone? And hopefully if the big picture goes through, and maybe we don't have to meet, and then the direction is given enough that on the 18th, you know, if there's any other issues, we can talk about them on the 5th, but if not, on the 18th, we can probably give the blessing because we kind of really feel that we got all the pieces in place. Not the detail per se, but the bigger picture and what that would produce for a levy, if any.
And then delete from there if we're not happy with where the levy is?
Right, I mean, yeah. I mean, if the levy is obviously, you know, X point, whatever we tell the state, that's the max we can do.
Right.
And then it can only go down from that. So that's really what we are telling the state at the end of September.
Well, did Amy feel handcuffed last year because of that? Because when we set the levy, because we did set it higher and then cut back from there.
Some of that, but more of it is like, there are some larger issues with the parks, some trail connections and so how important do we think those are? And then how can we plan it? That's just one example. It's not maybe like next year, but plus that too, you know, if we all of a sudden during talk say, well, this department really needs another person, they probably know that anyways, but is it important to us to push that through or wait or those type of discussions?
Okay, so 28th at 6?
If that works for everyone?
So far.
Okay. And then we'll, like I said, Mike, this is the first shot at being a little different, so don't feel that you and Patty have to have every nut and bolt tied down. You know, there's going to be some questions and some things, and
you still have time to get us an answer after that.
right. But there's also it's maybe getting more input from the council on the front end versus we do the levy and then we go through it, and then we ask all the questions. We can maybe have some of that stuff, you know, just to probably moving the time frame up a couple months. But okay. Okay, next on the agenda, consent agenda. Anyone have any questions, concerns, issues on the consent agenda items? Now, Maggie, what happens during the consent agenda items, we don't go through each one. If there's a question or issue that you may have, you know, on any of the items in the consent agenda, we just bring them up and get answers if you can. If not, you know, go for it. And then we just kind of approve that whole consent agenda as one big vote.
Thank you.
Anyone have any questions, issues? Well, you can't make it look like it's always this easy for Maggie, but.
I have one that I found a little bit misleading. That's the minutes, first page, just below mid sheet. It's moved by Nikolai to approve resolution 17-7-17-1, appointing council member and calling for a special election to fill vacancy. It was a 3-1. I don't remember if I voted against special election. My vote was such that I wasn't opposing Maggie, and I stated why. But according to this, the whole thing I voted against.
You did. That was the only vote that was taken, was on the resolution.
Okay, then.
Yeah.
All right.
You did elaborate your position? Okay.
No comments.
Anything else? If not, I guess I'll make a motion to approve the consent agenda.
Second.
Second by Dave Brujic. If there's no other comments, all in favor say aye. Aye. Any opposition? Okay. Miscellaneous. This is the time.
I was looking at the minutes. Who made the motion?
I made the motion and Dave Brujic seconded.
Sorry.
That's fine. Miscellaneous. Maggie, what we do is kind of go around the room and if anyone has anything they'd like to bring up. So start with Patrick. Anything?
Congratulations, welcome to the council.
Thank you.
Mitch?
Good.
Mitch is good. Jim?
I have nothing this evening.
Bruce? Been kind of quiet today.
Just to let you know, we'll start the interview process for our water operator in the coming week here or so, and then also we're advertising for our lineman position, so. That's all I
How was
have.
it at the Solar Gardens in Owatonna? Did you go?
Yeah, I did. And I took Who else went with me? Just one staff member. Good, they had a nice presentation. New Prague and Simple are part of the new solar installation that is built in Owatonna, so some of that energy will be used by our community as well. So, that open house was a couple weeks ago.
So like, can we put that in the Star and Tribune like Jordan does?
Yeah. No, we really have no customers in the city that have really expressed a lot of interest in solar. And should we have that, we have some opportunities that they can invest in a utility scale project along with us versus being separate, so, and offer some economies of scale. So should those opportunities come up, we have some solutions for them. So.
Okay. Thank you. Glenn? Well, I didn't want you really to stand up.
I figured you wanted me to say something.
You opened the door.
In your package, you'll see this little drawing. Nothing more than just to make you aware of the MnDOT put the white lines on the road, which is indicating that the driving lane, which will be the new width of the driving lane when the road is redone, is 11 feet. So that's all that white line on Main Street's doing, is to just give everybody a feel of what the new driving width will be in 2020. So just wanted to make you aware of that, and make the general public aware of that. This also is showing what is currently there, 11-foot sidewalks, 14-foot parking bays. We know the parking bays are going to change. That's still up in discussion with MnDOT as far as how wide they will be. They won't be 14 feet. That's actually a lot more than it needs to be. Whatever comes off those parking bays is going to be added to the sidewalk. So if the parking bays end up being 12 feet wide, for example, instead of 11-foot sidewalks, we're going to have 13-foot sidewalks. So just nothing more than information. Then also upcoming meetings and events, things that all the different teams to do with 2020 road construction, the different meetings that are coming up, just for your information. If you want to attend, you're more than welcome, but just to let you know that that's...
How was the discussion at the Check Me Out?
Check out New Prague was pretty good. Had about 20 people stop at the booth. Most of the people that stopped there, much to our surprise, says, I've never heard anything about it. So it was a good thing we were there, because they never heard anything about it. So we were informing people as they were walking by. We only had one suggestion put into the box. It was good. We informed people that we're going to be redoing Main Street, you know. So that was a good thing. The last thing that I wanted to make you aware of is in the baseball field, the towers are down. Those came down last Friday, came down really well. The footings got to come out from the tower's edge, which shouldn't be a big deal. They're supposed to start staking tomorrow, which will give the contractor an idea where the new dugouts get put and the new grass line gets cut and things like that, the new fences, things like that. The last thing I wanted to make you aware of, if you hear any talk about it, we had $20,000 budgeted in the baseball budget for a new sprinkler system. All the quotes came back at $29,000 to $31,000. Our objective by putting in a new sprinkler system was to correct some of the areas that don't get watered properly today. We also wanted to incorporate bigger heads that would get the same amount of water on the field in a shorter period of time. And according to Jeff from the golf course, who is our grass expert, the shorter you can, the more water you can get on in a shorter period of time, just gives you less chance of causing disease to the grass. That was our objective. We didn't think it was worth spending $30,000 to shorten that span from 5 hours down to 3 hours. So what we're going to do now is we're going to hire a local contractor. After a lot of discussion, me and Mike and with Jeff and Jim, our system is not shot. There's no means or no reason to throw it out completely for that kind of money. If we could have done it for 20, okay, we had it budgeted, it would have been good for the future. 30, we just assume not. We're going to fix those problem areas. We're going to add the sprinkler system that sprinkles the line rock basically between first and third base. Something that if you have a tournament there, something you want to do. If you got a tournament going on starting Friday night through Sunday night, and it's a really dry weekend, you want to constantly be dumping water on that infield or on the ag line to keep the dust down. Makes the playability better. So we'd be adding that system. We'd be moving some of the heads that are problem areas. We'd be adding another zone in the outfield. And then putting in the spigot behind the pitcher's mound that enables them to couple in a hose and be a 2-inch, inch and a half or 2-inch hose. And then you can water down like the home plate, the pitcher's mound, whatever little areas you need to take care of during a tournament again. The quote we got from the local contractor, and the beauty with the local contractor is he'll let us work with him. So the worst case scenario should be $8,300 unless we contribute a lot of labor that will keep that cost down. So that's the route we decided to go. I think it's a good route. I think it's going to work out well for that field. It's going to fix our problem areas. It would have been great to have a new system. If we'd have got it for the 20, I didn't think it was worth spending 30. Any questions other than that? I just wanted to keep you up to speed on that's what's going on there.
I have a question just for the public listening. Back to the road configuration.
Yep.
The 11-foot lanes.
Yep.
That is done by the state, right? We don't have any say in that, correct?
You know, it wasn't even a really big discussion. You'll find some roadways that are 12 feet wide. That's probably a little higher speed road that's going to be 12 feet wide. The 11 feet is pretty much MnDOT standard. We're comfortable with it. It gives that driver kind of this squeezed in effect a little bit that kind of helps slow them down, but it's still plenty wide enough for truck traffic going through town, bigger implements, things like that. 11 feet is fine.
Yeah.
Technically, by MnDOT standards, you could be 10 feet wide.
Okay. And I just want to clarify that more what we have a say in is between the sidewalk and the parking bay. To some extent, or?
Yeah.
Between the
drive lane.
drive lane and the curb line.
And to the buildings.
Yes.
That's more what we have a say in,
Yes.
right?
They really don't care about the sidewalk. They're more concerned about road bed.
Okay.
So we're in discussion now that we're not in total agreement as far as how wide we want our parking stalls to be. They have something in their mind, we have 12 feet in our mind, so we're still kind of going back and forth. There's nobody that said no to anything, so it's still up for discussion. Whatever doesn't end up in that parking stall will end up on a sidewalk.
But to your point, to your question, is that ultimately the city council will have to enter into what they call a project cooperation agreement to do the project with the state of Minnesota. As you recall from the very beginning when we started talking with them, is that we would have abilities to have input into various components and pieces up to a certain degree in that design phase. As Glenn reiterated, is that the state is reasonably sane that the drive lane, and they wanted to give people an idea with the painting of that fog line. This is really what the drive lane should be under our standards. As you can see with what's left, and as Glenn indicated, that there's some ongoing differences of opinion, both within MnDOT and or what we believe, and it's trying to show you as a council a little bit, is to take a look at that area that, as Glenn and I have talked, and the committee will talk at their upcoming meeting here, as we interact with the state as well, is not taking or stealing his thunder, but when you look at the plowing of snow and where that sits until we're able to get to it, as quickly as we're able to get to it, and looking at trying to open up the car doors in that vicinity, is that there is some room for discussion, and they have strong desires to probably reduce what we see. The question becomes is where can we find hopefully some middle ground that we can both agree on. And so what it is intended, at least for your benefits, before you ultimately have to come and make a final decision, either with the stakeholders committee that we've got working and taking a look at this, is the state has some very strong internal design and traffic standards that they would like to see. Glenn and our public works and our engineers have some different thoughts, and so there will be some interplay in what's left in that 14 feet as to ultimately what may be able to happen. And as you attempt to narrow that down at all, then we have the abilities to modify or add to the sidewalk to enable certain landscaping and lighting and other things that could be dealt with in the design of that project. And so it's designed to kind of make you aware a little bit about here's what this looks like. And, we're going to have some input, but they also have some strong determinations.
That's all I got.
All right, thank you.
But
Ken?
I'm sorry, the intent of this piece is that, I think you had asked about putting it on this calendar, and that this is all of our boards and commissions and council. We're going to try to work with the committee, the engineers, and staff, to have a monthly update like this, give you some information, maybe more data on what's happening, so you have a better understanding of what's happening.
No, and I appreciate that. I was just asking for the public so they know sort of what so far has been said.
Ken?
Just have the resignation from Kelly Holden on the Park Board, so we will need a Park Board member to replace her. So I don't know if there was extra people or not that have been interviewed, but.
Yeah, we had Andrew Beckius.
Okay.
Was one that.
You want to check with him to see if he's still interested?
Yeah.
I
Okay.
think. Now, do we need two if you're?
Oh, yeah.
Oh, yeah.
Because we're losing Amy out there.
Yeah.
Yes, we would.
So we might have to advertise again.
You want to stay in place?
Mhm. I think, and we're still looking for a youth, right?
Still need a youth.
But is everyone else, all other boards and commissions full now? I think so. I think we had ample people that, yeah.
Maybe when school starts, we can have the school put it on their notice board.
Okay. Okay, anything else? Ken?
Nope.
Mike? Sean?
I got one thing, the swim club wanted to donate a flag for the new pool, and wanted to have some type of coronation or something, maybe even with the color guard. And I said that it would have to go, I wanted to get our council's feeling on that first, and then bring it to, I believe Monday. Maggie, we have a joint powers, is it this Monday or next Monday coming up? We have another one?
14.
Yeah, next Monday. And then get, obviously, the joint powers, see what their feeling is, but they'd like to donate this flag for inside the pool. So I thought I'd bring it to you guys first, and then bring it up to the joint powers. And
I think it's a great idea.
okay.
Do you think that could be part of the grand opening?
Is that like September
10th?
20?
If we can
Yeah.
tie it in that quickly, sure.
That's been moved, it sounds like, the grand opening of the pool till probably October.
Yeah, it was the second week in October.
Okay.
Guess I can take it off my schedule.
We can discuss it then, I guess, at the joint powers. But
Okay, no, I think that's a great idea.
everybody's okay?
Anything else?
Nope.
David?
Yeah, I will not be here for the next council meeting on the 21st.
Okay. That it?
Just decided to skip.
No, we're heading out to Columbus, Ohio to move one of our daughters. And then we're going to travel back to Michigan to see two of our other kids.
Nice.
Sounds like a good one.
Maggie, anything? Any
Just
questions?
a thank you to the council members and all that are here for welcoming me. Thank you.
Okay, Amy?
Just back to the pool, I have a question. The patio, for the outside, is that gonna be next year? We're supposed to be doing that, right?
No, they included it in the project.
So it's in the project, it's just not done yet?
I
The
think it's-
umbrellas are here.
The
but-
umbrellas are in there, but there's nothing to sit on.
Yeah, we were
Oh,
waiting for
Those pieces
their order.
did-
Okay, all right, that's what I was
They're
just
supposed to be,
wondering.
when you're on a patio, you're supposed to be laying on your blanket.
No, I'm allowed to bring my blanket when I. That's what I was just checking. I know there's a lot still going on there to be done, but I was just wondering if that was something for next year or not.
No, as far as I know, everything's been ordered.
Yeah, I was gonna say it's been ordered, but it hasn't been delivered.
Okay. Have the water bikes arrived yet, or?
Not that I've heard.
Okay.
Okay, anything else?
No, that's it.
Okay, I don't have anything except to welcome Maggie again to the council. I'm looking forward to working with her, so. If there's nothing else, I'll make a motion to adjourn.
Second.
Second by Sean Ryan. All in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Any opposition? We're out of here. Thank you, everyone.